Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Honest Concepts Podcast. My name is Bronson Long. This is my instructor, Master Autry.
Hey
Sir,
guys,
how are you doing today?
Yes, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine.
Good.
Weather's coming around. That pollen's going away.
I'm so thankful.
Yes, sir.
I'm tired of these allergies. Just get out of here. You know?
Yes, sir. And we had a lot of rain come through, so I think it's kind of washing all that stuff away.
Absolutely.
It's real good. I'm glad about it myself. So if you are unfamiliar with this show, this is more than just our walk through martial arts. This is more importantly our walk through life. I've been trained in martial arts with you since I was about 15 years old.
Yes, sir.
And here we are 12 years, 13 years later. And over the years, I've got the privilege to be able to sit down with you and speak with you and kind of hear your thoughts and opinions on things, right? Our thoughts and our experiences. And every week we have a new topic.
Right.
Sometimes I get to pick, and the next week you get to pick. And so this week was your pick.
It was.
And I'm excited to hear what you got planned for us today.
Okay. You know, things aren't what they always seem to be. That was kind of the starting of this. First of all, before I do that, I want to tell you something that, and I know we're on doing this on live and all, but I want to tell you that I've never seen anybody grow as fast in the martial arts and as a person as you have in the last 6-7 years. And I mean that. I truly mean that.
Thank you, sir.
I didn't want to just wait to do it on the air. I was going to tell you a little while ago, but I mean, to listen to you talk and to watch you with your students, it's a pleasure. And I mean that from the heart. It really is. You know, I was 13 years old. You know, like I say, I was born and raised in church. I've gone to church most of my adult life. And there was this gentleman, and every time we went to church, I was 13, he would go to my dad and hug my dad. He would just hug him. And back then, guys didn't hug like they would do now, the man hug, you know. And he'd do it in Sunday school, he would do it at night, he'd do it on Wednesdays, visitation nights, whatever. So I asked my dad one day, I said, we'll just call him Mr. Guy, since he was a guy. I said, Dad, why does Mr. Guy hug you all the time when he sees you? He says, son, how old are you? I said, well, Dad, I'm 13. He said, I'll tell you what, when you get older, I'll tell you. I said, yes, sir. I didn't think about it. 16 years old, we're going to the ball game. We just left a ball game. My dad and I watch a lot of baseball. He said, son, you remember asking me about 3 years ago why Mr. Guy always hugged me? Excuse me. I said, yes, sir, I do remember that. He said, I'm going to tell you. I said, okay. They were having visitation nights at church. You know, you guys, they always team up and go out and visit people to try to get them to come to church. He was by himself this night. He was an odd man out. So he said, I'll just cold call. Nobody came in and filled that little slip. So Dad was just going down the road. He said, something told me to turn down this road to the right. I've never been down this road. He went down the road. There's a house at the end of the street. He said, so I drove up to it. He said, no lights were on. There's one car in the driveway. He said, I'm not going to get out, but something just kind of pushed me out of the car to get out. He said, so I go up and I ring the doorbell. Wait about 2 minutes. Nobody came, so I went to walk off. Something pushed me back on that step, said ring the doorbell again. He's like, so he just rang the doorbell. He said he went to walk off the porch, and something said, get back on that doorbell and just ring it, ring it, ring it. He's like, it was the strangest thing. So I just kept ringing the doorbell. True story. He said, I rung it about 20 times. No lights on. All of a sudden, he said, this door just opens up. This man standing there just covered with tears. His hair was all messed up. He said it scared him, actually. My dad said, I was pretty frightened. And he yelled at my dad. He said, what do you want? Dad said, well, I'm here to invite you to church. I'd probably left. Right. Dad said, I'm here to invite you to church. And I don't know what was said after that, but anyway, the guy opened the door and said, you want to come in? Dad said, yeah. Well, the gentleman was in the closet getting ready to commit suicide. Wow. Yeah, and I'm not going to go into details what he was doing. But him and my dad sat there for 2 hours, crying and laughing and stuff, and he started coming to church. So every time he saw my dad, he went up and he hugged him.
Wow.
And as good a story as that is, that Dad was there. The other part that I always think about too is he waited 3 years to tell me because I wasn't ready to hear that at 13. Yeah. So that always stuck in my mind. Always has, always will. You know, it was just what an experience.
Right.
You know?
Wow, what a story. My goodness gracious. It's so interesting how things happen like that, where if he would have pulled up to that house 1 minute later,
Yeah.
you know, if he would have sat in the truck for a second, just kind of stared at the house, like, I'm just not going to do it, you know?
Yeah.
Timing is just so weird how that stuff always turns out to be.
He was supposed to be there.
Mhm.
He was meant for him to be
Right.
there. And, you know, I was thinking about telling the story because I've never told a story, I think, but twice in my whole life. And what gets me is my dad waited till I got 16. And I'm going to get your thoughts on this and let
Okay.
you talk. I don't sit here and talk a whole lot. But anyway, I feel like, and I could be wrong, and I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of people share too much with their kids when they're young nowadays. You know, I've had kids tell me at 6, 7 years old in my school, or if I'm teaching at some daycare, or if I'm teaching at the church or wherever, teaching martial arts. I've had kids come up and say, my mom and dad hate each other. And I'm like, wow, they have so much argument in front of their kids.
Right.
You know, they can't handle that.
Mhm.
I'm sure they go to bed at night saying, man, my mom and dad's mad. And what kind of feeling do they have trying to go to bed?
Right.
You know, and you'll see the same thing, I'm sure.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I was even thinking about it maybe just yesterday, I think it was, just wondering when I'll let my daughter in on certain things about life. You know what I mean? And, you know, I agree with you, actually, 110%, because I was talking to myself about it the other day. You know, when you work by yourself, you got a lot of time to think.
You do.
You know, you end up getting caught up in your head and, you know, kind of deep diving into your own thoughts sometimes. And I was more or less having an internal conversation with myself saying,
Right.
you know, what ultimately came to the place of you only get your childhood once. You know, you can be an adult for the vast majority of your life. You know, if this is your life, this much of it's your childhood.
Right.
It's so small. And, you know, I was driving through an apartment complex today. I was watching these kids, you know, they came flying out in front of me while I'm driving in a truck, you know. And luckily I kind of saw that they were coming beforehand, so I didn't have to slam on brakes or anything. But as they rode by, you know, one's on rollerblades and two of them are on bikes. And I'm sitting here looking at the clock and I'm like, you know, this is about to be a rough time getting home with this traffic. And I watch them just roll by, just carefree, sunshine, and they're just happy, laughing and loving life. And the older you get, you can have times to do that. There's times to have fun and times to play, but you do have to work and have responsibilities as you get older. You only get that freedom, that blissful love of life and enjoyment for just a small section of your life. And the more I thought about when and where I'll tell my daughter things about life, the more I was like, I'll just wait. I'll wait longer and longer on that because I don't want to take that away from her.
Right.
You know, you want them to be prepared. You want them to be, you know, well equipped with the tools that it takes to navigate your way through the crazy world that we find ourselves in every day. But I think there's timing to that. I'm sure I'll mess it up a couple of times. But
Everybody does.
Yes,
I mean, you know, things are a little off time and stuff, but, you know, I've had, excuse me, guys, I've had parents tell me, you know what, I tell my kids everything. I keep no secrets from them. Well, yeah, I've had kids come in and say, my mom and dad's getting ready to lose their house. They can't afford it at, you know, 4th grade.
right.
Well, a 4th grader don't need to know that.
Right.
In my opinion, they don't.
Yeah.
You know, what kind of burden are you putting on them to worry about? I'm going to lose my house, my bedroom, whatever. You know, I've had them cry in my school. I've gone to private lessons or other schools and teach seminars. I've had them come up to me, you know, young kids, and tell me that. And I'd go home at night and thinking, wow, that's sad. You know, you shouldn't put that kind of pressure on a kid.
Right.
They said, well, they deserve. No, I think they need to be a kid.
Right.
Now, they need to be corrected. Don't get
Yes.
me wrong, you know. But, I mean, like I say, I would never, me and Ms. Alter, we never had any, we don't argue anyway, but we've never done anything in front of our daughter, ever.
Right.
You know, if we have a little misunderstanding or something, we would never do it in front of our children. We just didn't do it, you know. It's because they don't deserve that.
Right.
I don't
They
think.
don't deserve that.
Right.
They deserve better.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're exactly
Exactly.
right. And it certainly does weigh on somebody. And, you know, obviously I can speak from experience on that. You know, being in 2nd grade, so it's supposed to be around 7, 8 years old or
Right.
so. I've never been much of an artist. I can doodle with the best of them, but I'm not much of an artist. I can doodle. But I would do these little drawings.
Right.
And, kids, your lunch costs a certain amount of money. Most parents would give their kids a check, and you turn the check in. And so now you have like a balance that you pay. But a lot of times on Fridays, kids would come in, they'd have an extra $1 or $2, and they'd spend it on chips or a special drink or something, a cookie in the cafeteria. Well, I picked up on that. Now, I didn't have any extra cash on Fridays.
Right.
So I'd do these little doodles, and I'd sell them for $1. And I was 7 years old hustling.
And one day that's going to be a famous artist.
Right. Keep that. It only grows in value. Right.
When you're 120, you can cash it in for $2. You double your money.
Right. I'd take those dollars, and I'd go home, and I would put them under my mom's pillow, and it never told her about it. Never told her that where it was coming from. I'm sure she probably she's no dummy.
Right.
She figured something was going on.
Sure.
But I would do that.
Yeah.
And you don't do that stuff unless you're aware of things going on. You know what I mean? And I was aware that things were hard sometimes.
A lot of pressure in you, though.
It does things to you. Some people are just born with that hustler's mindset.
Right.
They're always, doing things and making ends meet. But it's one thing to do it just for the joy of it, just for the grind. It's another thing. And I love my mother. I wouldn't speak an ill word upon her. But it's another thing when you're a kid and you feel like you're doing things you can to help make a household meet.
Right.
And it's $1, but I really thought I was out there working, doing stuff.
Hustling.
Yeah, I was out there, So yeah, you're right. It really does do things,
I had I went to school one time, and I was doing a show and tell. Pardon me, guys. I was doing a show and tell for one of my students. You have first graders, second graders. They used to have show and tells. I don't know if they still do. Well, I would go there on a Friday, and they'd bring some guy would bring a little car, some guy would bring a little lunch box or a little robot man, and this guy I bring him astrology. He's my karate instructor. I'd sit there with him, and those little kids would get up there, and some of the stories they would tell. I'm like, it's just like they would tell their whole home life,
right.
And the teacher would look at me, and I'm like, wow, and it really makes you think. I know. Kids, to me, they want everybody to be a family. They
Right.
do.
They do.
And they truly want. They want everybody to be a family. Ms. Autry and I, we were at Myrtle Beach probably 10, 12 years ago. Well, we've been there since, but
Right.
we get up one early morning. It was a beautiful morning, quiet. We get up like 5:30. Sun's coming up 6 o'clock. We're going to go down and get a cup of coffee. Well, we come up to the red light. The windows were down in the car. Man and woman on the corner. They were homeless, and you could tell they'd been drinking or drugs or whatever. They had this little kid with them, 4 or 5 years old, about 5 years old, Ms. Autry.
Wow.
The man and the woman were just arguing, screaming, yelling, cussing at each other. And so the man grabs the little kid by the hand and starts walking across the street. The little boy gets halfway across the street. He stops. He said, "Come on, Mommy. It'll be okay. Just come on." And he was trying to get the family together.
Right.
So that's the kind of effect it has on kids.
It does.
You don't realize it. He was just sitting there, and to this day, we still talk about that. Man, it just breaks your heart.
Oh, it does.
All he wanted was his mom and dad to be happy,
Right.
and be together.
Right.
They were homeless, and you could tell they were probably druggies and stuff, alcoholics, and rough looking. But the little kid was like, "Daddy, it's okay, Mom." He was
Right.
trying to patch things up,
Right.
and you see that just
Yeah, that does
another
something.
level.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. And you're 100% right. And I think what you said it the best way you could say it is that you don't deserve that. It's not his place to be their marriage counselor.
Right.
He only gets that childhood one time, and here he is spending it trying to mend something that he didn't even put together in the first place.
Have you experienced this at your school yet with students?
To a degree, like you said, things aren't always as they seem.
Right.
And I think most people going through life can attest that they've seen things before. You're like, wow, I never thought that person would say that, or I never thought that person would do that. You're like, no way, not that guy. But I think, granted, I've taught a lot less students than you, and one of the ones that really hit me the biggest, I may have told the story on here before, so I apologize if this is a repeat, but I think about it all the time, in our system, the system you developed, we do a lot of gun disarms.
Right.
Just awesome gun disarms. Very, very nice. And I had a lady come in. She was so excited. She kept telling me she wanted to do, she just wanted to move. She wanted to be fit. She wanted to do stuff. And usually when people say that, it means they want to move and be fit and do stuff, That's
what you said.
Right, that's what you said. So I didn't think about it being... usually people have problems, at least in my experience. I don't know about yourself, but in my experience, people will tell you, I want confidence, or I want to feel safe, or something happened to somebody I know, or they'll give you something that makes you say, okay, we need to really put some emphasis on other things. This person just said they wanted to move. I just need to get up and move around. So cool, come on in. So we got her moving. And
Young or old? Middle.
Yeah, maybe. If I had to guess, maybe late 40s, early 50s,
Okay.
somewhere around there. I know she had grandchildren. But she came in, and she was doing great. We had a good time. I put a sword in her hand. We were moving, and she had pretty good footing. I think she used to dance when she was younger, if I remember correctly. And I was like, cool, this is doing good, And then I moved to gun disarms. Big mistake. I grabbed that gun and I pointed it right at her chest, and she just crumbled.
I remember that.
Yes,
You
sir.
told me that.
She just crumbled. And here I am, I'm 21. I just sat there and watched her crumble. I didn't know what to do or what to say. I myself was in shock. I just didn't know what to do, how to handle it. And eventually she composed herself. And she apologized to me, and she kind of gave me a brief explanation as to what was going on. And it was one of those moments where it's like things just aren't always what they seem. You just never know who you're talking to, where these people come from.
What happened to them in the future or the past?
Right.
They're worried about the future.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
We were at a black belt test. We always go out to dinner.
Right.
All of us, everybody, usually say like 15, 20, 30 people go out to dinner. So we went to the fish camp. And so we're sitting there eating the fish camp, and this lady was there. She had trained maybe 4, 5, 6 months, maybe a year, I don't know. Well, I took a knife one day, a little rubber knife, and we were doing knife disarms, and I put it next to her throat, and she started, same thing, she starts yelling. I said, well, I'm sorry. That's when I learned right quick to ask.
Right.
So after about 3 or 4 months, she said, I want you to do a knife disarm. I'm going to put the knife to my throat, I want to do a disarm. And I said, okay. So she made a milestone, right? She was so excited. So we were sitting there eating dinner, me and Ms. Autry, and her and her husband just happened to be right across from us. And it was like, it must have been 40 people there. And she was telling everybody, then actually, I'm wrong. She was there for almost 2 years.
Okay.
I said, yeah, she was there for almost 2 years. Something just triggered, but she was there for almost 2 years. So we're sitting there talking. Everybody, talking about the black belt test. Everybody was testing for black belts. I was talking about how good the test was. She said, you know what? She said, I let him, talking about me, Master Autry, hold that knife to my throat. She said, nobody does that. I don't even let my husband do that. And I'm like, oh,
Yikes.
no. And she didn't mean nothing by it. She was proud.
Right.
She was just happy.
She'd done something.
She'd done something. And her husband just kind of looked at me. He just kind of gave me a look. And as we've come a long way, trying to, she said, yeah. And what it is, it put him down. And she
Right.
wasn't trying to.
Right.
I told Miss Autry after that on the way home, I said, man, that's not good. We never saw her again.
I believe it.
She was there for about 2 years, Miss Autry, about 2 years. We never saw her again. And I'm thinking, she was excited.
Right.
I bet he just got all over her. And she didn't mean nothing by it. It did sound like it was,
Right.
but she didn't mean that.
Right.
She was just excited,
Right.
So, things aren't what they say.
Things aren't what they seem, that's for sure. That's right. The stories really are endless of things that have happened where people come up to you. And, it's so funny because you just never know. Over time you can kind of start to spot some things. You can guess. You have a guess, a decent one.
And actually, it's fun.
It actually is
Yeah,
kind of
I
fun.
enjoy it, yeah.
Yes, sir. Right. And what it is it's not me being nosy or trying to gossip. I'm doing my very best to try to give you what you want as a
Right.
student and hopefully what you need,
Yeah.
Doing my best to put you in an environment that's going to make you feel good and be happy, because that's the environment that your school's provided for me.
Sure.
I could go in there, even if I had a migraine. I was just plagued with chronic migraines as a young man. And even if I had a migraine, I would still go to your class, because for some reason when I walked out, I just didn't have a headache anymore. I was up moving, I was laughing, good chemicals are going through the brain, and it just did something. You know, it was very, very rare for me to miss a class at your school. Something went astronomically wrong,
Right.
because no matter what went wrong through the day, I knew if I just went into that school,
You'd
I
feel
could get
better.
a break from everything else, walk out, and you know, it's like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
You get to walk out and do something new. And that's the environment that, you know, you did such a good job, and your assistant instructor did a good job doing that. I try to recreate that in the school. And so when people come in, you look at them, you go, what can I do to give them the same experience? How can
That's the secret right there. What
Yes,
can I do?
Yes, sir.
And it's all on you.
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's great. I love to hear that.
Yes, sir.
I'm a proud father.
Yes, sir. What can I do to give them that experience? And sometimes it's hard to tell what's really going on, because people are good at wearing masks.
Yeah.
You know, some people go in, they could be, and this is just, you know, metaphor or whatever, but he could be a big time CEO and, you know, have all the money in the world, and, you know, the family portrait on the desk just looks beautiful, but his home life is a wreck. His mental health is a wreck. You know, it's just got, you know, bad stuff behind those doors. And for some odd reason, when you're a martial arts instructor, people open up those doors and they start showing and telling stuff that you just didn't expect.
I'm not kidding you. Again, I keep saying that, but you can ask me Sergeant Wheat. I've had so many people tell me so many things. It's just, I'd go home and I wouldn't go to sleep till 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, sir.
You know, I was around so many people for so long, for, 40 years. It's just hundreds and hundreds of people. That's why I kind of like it quiet.
Right.
I'll be around those crowds now. I'm kind of done with that. But you're right. I mean, you sit there and you're thinking, wow, this guy's got it together, but they don't.
Right.
And then you look at somebody like, man, these people here are kind of down the luck. They're the happiest people in the world,
Right.
because they don't expect much. They appreciate what they have.
Exactly.
And that's what it's all about,
You're right.
That's exactly what it is.
You're right. So that appreciation and that gratitude goes a long way. Pool Mike comes in. He
Hey,
says,
Mr. Pool Mike, how you
he
doing,
says,
sir?
Pool Mike on board. Social media makes things better than they seem. Life turns social media into reality. You are 100% correct, too. That's very, very true. And it does something to... I don't want to get too deep, because I don't want to take this conversation for... You have a generation of people who missed out on their senior year of high school. You have a generation of people that missed kindergarten because of COVID. You know, these people had school from home. They're born into this. You know, I'm a part of the generation where social media had been invented. We were kind of the test dummies, my generation. But this new generation doesn't know any better.
Right.
Really, truly, they don't. They don't know what life is like without it. How could they tell? Even if they're not on it, everyone else around them is. And when you look on there, even the pictures aren't real. There's filters added to it. There's different lighting, the makeup. I mean, by the time a kid is 10 years old, he can do what Hollywood was doing in the 80s and 90s. I mean, master at camera angles and lighting and shading. And it gives young men and women this different perception on what reality is. Every time you go on, there's somebody buying a new jet, or they're taking a trip to Dubai, or the house stuff is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the people have put the videos of their houses, and they touch a button on the wall, and there's a secret room, and inside of the secret room there's another secret room. I saw somebody say something on the internet a couple years ago. It's like, can we just make a normal house normal again? Can we just make being normal again? And I think Pool Mike's spot on there, is that things aren't always what they seem. You look at those pictures, they don't tell the truth.
No. You know, I watch YouTube, and I hope you guys do too. I was watching YouTube the other day, and they're showing this little girl. She's doing ballroom dancing. She's probably 12, 10, 11 or 12, and there's a lot of clips of her. I mean, she's a cute little girl. She's pretty. But they got her dressed up like she's 25.
Right.
You know, and I'm thinking, even though she's good and she wins all these trophies and prizes and stuff, you still got to be yourself, you know. And one thing about it, we go to a lot of martial art tournaments, and I've been to hundreds and hundreds of tournaments, and you know, and we've all won trophies and stuff, and as a school and all, and it's great. But you know what? I always tell people when I come back home, you know, you do this for yourself, and that's it. You know, you're not doing it to go in there and show off. You're not doing it because it's not. It's not about winning the trophy. It's not. It's about just competing and testing yourself.
Right.
That's what it is. It's for yourself. It's not to show off to hurt somebody. I mean, at that time, you first started going to school, and we went to a karate martial art tournament, and this guy was walking around, and I pointed to that guy right there, and I said, that guy was going to be the best one here.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
He was walking around so arrogant, and he wanted everybody to see him. And I knew he was good, and he was. He won first
He was
place.
good.
Hmm. But you can just tell by the way he walks. What makes it good is when they can't tell.
Right.
You walk in very humble, very quiet, very nice. You walk in, and then you take away first place trophy.
Yes, sir.
That's what it's about. It's not about being cool.
Right.
It's about being humble. You know?
Yes, sir. It's all about being yourself.
Exactly.
That's very, very true. And I think there's a lot to that. You take those principles you learn in martial arts and you apply them to real life. That's the only way I've ever known to grow. You know what I mean? I had no real growth in my life until I came into martial arts. And so anytime I learn a life lesson, there's some type of martial arts principle behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Being yourself, I think, is what unplugs you from that plastic, fake reality. When you start to do things for yourself, and not for the approval of other people,
Right.
is when you really, at least for me, is when I was able to really start walking down the path and discovering who I actually am. I'm constantly living to fit into this group or to get the approval of this other person or to avoid going against the grain of other people's opinions. I'm never really getting to explore what do I really feel? How do I really think? I'm constantly exploring how these other people feel and how can I accommodate that to fit in X, Y, Z, ABC, whatever. But when we unplug from that, or I'll say I shouldn't say we, when I unplugged from that and began to think about what is good for me,
Right.
what is good for my life, what should I do, not a selfish way, but what can I do to test myself, like you said, to do the things that are going to help me in life. I started to grow. I started to really learn some things about myself. I started to look at some music and go, I don't know if I actually like that. I turned it on because that's what everyone else was listening to, but it's not really my thing, And that's just a small chunk of what can happen to your whole life. You just start, exactly, I think you hit the nail on the head, sir. It's so true. Just do it for yourself, Just looking at that stuff, you can really grow.
For me, when I first got into martial arts, I was just a kid. I didn't know anything. But as I hopefully developed into an instructor and start watching people, one thing I learned more than anything, just treat everybody great and good and kind. Now, there's times you stand up for yourself, don't get me wrong. If you got to stand up, you stand up, you do what you got to do. But you be a good person, and at the end of the day, you give 100%, and that's it. Right. Sometimes it goes your way, sometimes it doesn't. But instead of getting upset or angry or something, or, I've been, when I was young, I've been in the floor, I've been knocked out, I've been choked down, I've had broken bones, but I didn't get mad. I just wanted to get better so it wouldn't happen again.
Right.
And that's same thing you did.
Yes,
and you came in there with a sword or whatever. You just want to get better. And that's everything you do. Ms. Autry loves the yard, and I do too. She wants the flowers to look better.
Right.
She loves digging her little flowers and putting the little fertilizer stuff around them. And I water them every morning. I want the yard to look good. I want the house to look good. I want our cars to be clean. It's just pride.
Right.
It's not showing off. It's just pure pride in yourself. And if you don't have that, you're not going to go very far.
Right.
Because nothing matters to you.
Right.
And for me, everything matters. My life matters, and my friendship matters. My wife matters. This house matters, and you take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
We're stewards of what we have.
Yes.
Not what we're going to get.
Amen.
We're not a steward of that. We're a steward of what we have now. So, good Lord, give it to you. Take care of it. That's just my thoughts for the day.
Wow. Sir, that was wonderful.
I don't know about that. That's
Very,
just how I
very
feel.
nice, yeah.
That's how I feel.
You're spot on with that. You're very, very, very true. Sir, I can't believe it's 8 o'clock. That's unbelievable.
Wow. And Paul Mike stayed the whole time.
Yeah. Well done, Mike.
Mr. Ben, I hope you're there. I want to say hello to you, sir. We'll
Hey,
see you
Mr. Ben.
Thursday.
Wow. Sir, what a fantastic time. That was just a great conversation. After a long day of work, I'll tell you, sometimes these Tuesday afternoons it's that breath of fresh air. It's just kind of like
I know
hitting
you
the
rushed
reset.
in here, too. That's hard.
Yes, sir. Right. But you get to hit the reset button sometimes. You get to come in and just take a break from all that stuff. And it's so good to do that type of thing.
When we start talking, as we start getting settled, time runs out, just like we did on the floor.
Yes.
When you start really getting going good, it's been an hour and a half, it's time to go. You're like, what?
Right.
It's the same thing here.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It really is amazing. One thing I sure do hope for is that anyone else who gets to watch gets to feel the same thing.
Yeah, I do too.
Just a little break from everything,
Yeah.
Because these are lessons and thoughts and experiences that we've had through life, through martial arts, which we apply to life. And I think most everybody can relate to it somehow or another.
I hope so.
I hope it starts a conversation around the dinner table at the household, or
Yeah.
makes you think about things a little bit different. It certainly does for me. Sometimes I go back and rewatch these, and
I
it's
do
like,
too.
man, that's,
Yeah.
it's good stuff.
Yeah,
So,
I enjoy it. I do.
yes, sir. Well, thank you very much, sir. Everyone who's watching and lurking, I hope you have a great rest of your evening, and we will see you guys next week, Tuesday at 7:30.
Have a good night, guys. Thanks.